The state of our union is suffering from a bit of whiplash. This morning, President Trump is renewing threats against Iran, warning them on social media he's, quote, no more Mr. Nice Guy, and vowing to blow up every bridge and power plant in Iran if the country won't make the deal that the U.S. is offering. We should note that targeting civilian infrastructure is considered a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. On Friday, President Trump suggested a deal was in fact close at hand. He's still sending representatives to Islamabad, Pakistan tomorrow for talks with Iran. This morning, Iran's top negotiator says the two sides remain far apart, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard commander says Iran is replenishing its missile and drone stockpiles during this ceasefire at a faster pace than they were doing before the war. Meanwhile, despite Trump's optimistic pronouncements Friday, the Strait of Hormuz right now remains not open. Iranian gunboats are firing on tankers attempting to transit the strait. It's a clear sign that nearly 2 months into this war, Iran's stranglehold on the global economy remains as tight as ever. Joining us now to discuss, Energy Secretary Chris Wright. Thanks so much for being here, Secretary Wright. We appreciate it.
You bet.
So President Trump in the Truth Social post this morning said if the Iranians don't take the deal being offered, quote, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. They'll come down fast. They'll come down easy. Are you not concerned that those proposed strikes on civilian infrastructure, including power plants, would hurt the innocent people of Iran and would constitute a war crime?
Yeah, look, the president's looking for maximum leverage, maximum leverage in these negotiations. A lot of their infrastructure supports only their war machine. Of course, a lot of it supports civilians as well. But no, I'm not worried about that. Negotiations are going very well. A lot of the chatter and noise you hear in public is really the signs of a regime that's falling apart. Different factions go in different directions. They're worried about trying to get some leverage at the end of these negotiations. I think President Trump and Vice President Vance have us on a pathway to a good ending of this conflict.
Both sides really seem to be dug down at this point. And again, look, these things are fluid. Things can change, but to this point, what we've seen is the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, as we understand. U.S. has blockaded Iranian ports. Do you believe the U.S. would consider lifting its blockade in order for Iran to reopen the strait? Or I just wonder how you assess sort of the pieces that each side seems to be employing right now and the implications of easing in any direction on those positions.
I mean, the Iranians got a big concession out of President Trump. They forced him to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu, who did not want a 10-day ceasefire, which started April 17. It expires next Monday. That's a big concession. And Trump has enormous leverage over an Israeli prime minister who's up for re-election, probably when the government goes to term in October, maybe sometime before. I just think when the Iranians say they've opened the straits, what that means is, and they've made it very clear, number one, only commercial vessels. Number two, in prescribed transit lanes. And number three, every tanker needs to seek the approval of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. That's what opening the straits means. So no doubt the president, under those circumstances, is not going to remove the blockade. But that demonstrating who's going to win or lose on the straits is going to take us farther and farther away from what has to happen. The only thing that's going to end this war, if it's going to end, is an agreement on an Iranian nuclear agreement that is plus or minus the one that Obama negotiated in 2015 and the one President Trump walked out of in 2018. That's what's on the table.
Yeah, the one he heavily criticized when he first came into office and tore up, and that may be where we end up now. You know, I remember, again, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but based on one of your previous appearances, I believe you said that you believed Iran had the greater leverage in diplomatic negotiations at that point. I believe that was about a week or so ago. Do you still believe that to be the case now? Where do you assess sort of the sides starting this potential process here?
I mean, I know it's politically inconvenient in Washington to admit, but if the war ended tomorrow, Victor, think about winners and losers. The Iranian regime survived. It's become harder line. The highly enriched uranium they still have. The ballistic missiles are not totally destroyed. They're digging out their silos in anticipation of another round. And they've deployed geography in a terrifying way. They can now, even if the straits are opened and you resolve this, the Iranians have demonstrated they can close the Straits of Hormuz anytime that they want. That was never the case, and it is now. Trump administration has cards as well, huge military, and they have stuff that the Iranians want. The real question in the end, Victor, is whose capacity to absorb pain? Who's got the higher or lower threshold to absorb pain? The Trump administration or the IRGC running the country in Tehran? And that question is only going to be answered, I'm afraid, in the days and weeks ahead.
I want to bring in Gene Seroka. He's the executive director of the Port of Los Angeles. And Gene, as I understand, you're in China to meet with shippers, exporters, and other port authorities. That part of the world gets a lot more of its oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. And I just wonder, what are you hearing from them and those stakeholders right now?
Good evening, Omar. Two real areas here, the uncertainty and the conflicting information, the stop-start that we've witnessed over the weekend with respect to the Strait. But I've been so heartened by the ports and the supply chain partners here in North Asia to keep the U.S. supply chain moving so fluidly, even amidst all this concern that we have. While vessel fuel prices doubled, they're off their highs right now, but supply is a concern.
Yeah. And I just wonder, are you seeing that shippers are more discouraged right now? Are they seeing this as a blip in the process? How are they sort of approaching, sort of the whiplash that we have seen to this point?
Well, it's been really difficult, Omar, because we're now in day 51 of this war with Iran. And the concern of many of us, including the shipping companies, is the health and safety of their crews, making sure they have enough food, water, and medicine and can ride this out, yet we don't know how long that's going to be. And in our industry, if a port is shut down, it usually takes from that one day about 3 days to catch up on all the scheduling. So here we are now, 6 weeks into this war and disruption on the supply chain side. This could take months on end to get these ships back into a normal rotation.
And, there's a lot of talk right now about when the Strait of Hormuz actually gets open, but the mere fact it's potentially open one day versus return to fully operational are two very different things. And you speak to these shippers all the time. You're also making assessments as well. But how long after any potential deal would it take for things to go back to normal in the sense that shippers trust that the route that they will take will be safe?
This is the most important point. And the companies that own and charter these ships don't want to be the first one to try this. Obviously, looking at safety and security of the crew first and foremost, the assets, the cargo, but also those mines that were said to have been put in that strait, making sure that that is of safe priority number one. Also, we're not going to see a straight line on this opening. We never thought from an industry perspective that there'd just be a green light and an all go forward. This is going to be an iterative process around a war zone with real concerns after these ships have been sitting for so long.
One of the things, there's a lot being negotiated, and we could see some more talks coming up this week as well. But one of the things that has been discussed is Iran potentially imposing a toll on the Strait. And obviously, look, the shippers want safe passages, but do you get the sense that they're making preparations for that possibility? I mean, how would they handle like a $2 million toll for operations that previously obviously did not have that consideration?
Around the world right now, Omar, the scenario planning is wide and far to make sure that companies stay ahead of the information and with what they learn, try to enable shorter-term tactics. And if a toll is on the horizon, it won't be a surprise to many in the industry. A war-torn region is witnessing now the opportunity to rebuild. It will need money and finances to do that. So that's a perspective that many have had. And also with the price of oil, that's come down over the weekend by about 10%. At these levels, those who are selling the oil are bringing in that cash as well. So that financial consideration for Iran and the broader region will be front and center to many of these shipping companies.
You know, earlier in the show, we were talking about how airlines, especially in the Europe region, will start to have to make some hard decisions in terms of jet fuel shortages and concerns about jet fuel shortages in the weeks and potentially months ahead. The president has previously said the Strait isn't a problem for the United States. And I remember the last time we spoke, you told me you weren't seeing a significant impact on the port of Los Angeles in particular. Is that still the case? And when does this impact the consumer in the United States?
Omar, the cargo is flowing smoothly. I've been really pleased with the on-time arrivals and departures of the vessels. But diesel prices are up 50% in Southern California. And at our port, 2/3 of the cargo moves in and out by truck. Those truckers are having to absorb that early cost hike and then pass it on to the import and export companies, which will in turn push that towards the American consumer. Gasoline prices at the pump are up 20%. That also has an impact. So while the cargo flow is good, the costs are growing daily because of this war and the squeeze on supply and global pricing.